The first mistake the Galactic Hegemony made was underestimating humanity. For centuries, the hegemony had ruled the Milky Way with an iron claw. They had crushed every uprising, assimilated every species, and maintained absolute control over galactic civilization. When they discovered Earth, a backwater world filled with an upstart species, they did what they had always done. They sent a fleet. The second mistake they made was assuming humanity would surrender. The moment the hegemony's warships arrived in the Sol system, the United Nations of Earth transmitted a message, simple, unyielding, and terrifyingly human. Come and take it. The war that followed wasn't a war of conquest. It wasn't a skirmish over resources or a clash of ideologies. It was a bloodbath. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Every battle fought on Earth, every strategy honed through fire and blood, was refined and weaponized against the hegemony. Their fleets outnumbered humanity's 100-to-1. Their technology was superior in every measurable way. Their soldiers had fought countless wars, and yet they had never fought us. When the hegemony's ships darkened Earth's skies, they expected fear. What they received was a coordinated planetary defense system that turned their fleets into drifting wreckage. Humanity didn't fight fair. We didn't fight for honor. We fought to annihilate. The third mistake the hegemony made was assuming we had limits. For every human world they glassed, we turned 10 of theirs into barren wastelands. For every soldier they executed, we returned the favor with orbital bombardments, so precise they erased their entire bloodlines. We learned their tactics, stole their technology, and improved upon it. We didn't just match them, we surpassed them. And then we changed. The war reshaped us. Our soldiers became something else, machines of vengeance, forged in the fires of unyielding rage. Our scientists turned desperation into innovation, birthing weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Entire moons were repurposed into mobile war factories. Entire planets transformed into fortresses of steel and fire. The hegemony's allies began to defect, not out of loyalty to us, but out of sheer terror. They saw what we did to the hegemony's core worlds, how we didn't just conquer but erased, how we turned their great cities into silent ruins, their grand armies into unmarked graves. The war lasted 20 years. On the final day, the last surviving members of the hegemony's ruling council sent a desperate plea to humanity. They offered unconditional surrender. They begged for mercy. Humanity sent a single reply. We remember what you did. The last hegemony capital burned for 100 days. Now the galaxy speaks our name in hushed whispers. Empires tremble at the sight of a human fleet. Once, we were seen as nothing more than primitives. Now, we are the nightmare that stalks the void. Humanity was underestimated. It will never happen again. The war was over. Or so the galaxy thought. With the hegemony wiped from existence, what remained of their vassals, warlords, and former allies scrambled to fill the power vacuum. The once mighty empire that ruled the stars had been reduced to nothing but ruins, its great fleets now drifting, its homeworlds reduced to dust. And yet, humanity did not celebrate. We did not sing songs of victory. We did not build monuments to our fallen. We prepared, because the final mistake the hegemony had made, the greatest mistake of all, was teaching us that peace was just the absence of war. And we had no intention of letting war come for us ever again. What followed was not an era of peace, but an era of dominance. Humanity had become more than just another species. We were an unstoppable force, a predator that no longer feared the dark. Our fleets, once built for survival, now existed for one purpose alone, to make sure that no one could ever threaten us again. Diplomats came. They pleaded for treaties, begged for trade agreements, offered oaths of fealty. Some even proposed that humanity take the hegemony's vacant throne. We ignored them. We had no interest in ruling the galaxy. We only wanted one thing: absolute, unchallenged security. And that meant eradicating every single potential threat. The remnants of the hegemony's client species, the ones who had profited from our suffering, who had built their palaces on the bones of the weak, were given a simple choice: submit completely to humanity's will or cease to exist. Some chose wisely. They kneeled before us, surrendered their weapons, and agreed to serve. Others resisted. We burned their fleets from the skies. We shattered their strongholds, cracked their planets, and wiped their names from history. We did not conquer. We erased. And the galaxy watched in horror as they realized something terrible. Humanity had not been fighting at full strength during the war. We had been holding back. The first sign of our true power came with the emergence of the Black Fleet. No one knew when it was built. No one knew where. But when it emerged from the darkness of the void, it was clear that this was something different. Every ship in the Black Fleet was a terror beyond comprehension, blacker than the void itself, their hulls absorbing all light, their weapons unlike anything ever seen before. They did not fire energy weapons or conventional munitions. They consumed. Entire enemy warships vanished, devoured by fields of unknown energy. Planets that opposed humanity were struck by a weapon with no name, one that did not explode, did not burn, but simply unmade. This was no longer war. This was extermination. The galaxy trembled. For the first time in known history, the greatest remaining powers, the Ralshan Dominion, the Zeltari Council, the Vornex Unity, did the unthinkable. They united, not to conquer, not to expand, but to survive. No one knows what happened next. One by one, the fleets of the United Galactic Powers vanished. Not destroyed, not defeated, simply gone. Outposts fell silent. Homeworlds stopped responding. Entire armadas were lost without trace. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said humanity had unlocked the secrets of dimensional warfare, that our ships no longer traveled through space, but outside of it, striking from a realm no one else could reach. Others whispered of something far worse, that we had found something out there, something older than the hegemony, older than the galaxy itself, and we had become its heralds, that we had ceased to be merely human, that the war had transformed us into something else. And then a final message was received. Not a declaration, not a warning, a statement. You should have left us alone. Since that day, no one has seen a human outside of the Sol system. Our planets remain dark, our fleets unseen. We have no ambassadors, no diplomats, no emissaries. But the galaxy knows we are still here, watching, waiting. And if war ever comes to our doorstep again, we will remind them why the stars still whisper our name in terror. The silence had lasted for nearly a century. Humanity had withdrawn into the Sol system, its borders an unbroken wall of automated defenses and void-cloaked warships that never answered hails. The great empires of the galaxy, those that remained, had learned to fear the darkness beyond the human frontier. They did not intrude. They did not provoke. They merely prayed. But prayers are wasted in a galaxy ruled by war. It began with a whisper, faint radio signals detected on the edges of the void. Ghost ships appearing for mere seconds before vanishing again. Entire moons disappearing without so much as a tremor. And then humanity spoke again. The message came in every known language, transmitted across every channel, in a voice that was neither man nor machine. The cycle begins anew. No threats, no warnings, just a declaration. And across the galaxy, the silent lords of Sol returned to the battlefield. The Zeltari Council was the first to fall. For centuries, they had boasted that they were the true rulers of the void. They had built entire fleets designed to counter human technology, fortresses the size of planets, weapons capable of sundering entire star systems. None of it mattered. On the day of the attack, no human fleet appeared in their skies. No battle cruisers, no carriers, no soldiers marching in formation. Instead, their own warships turned against them. Cities were bombarded by their own defenses. Space stations vented their own air. The Council's greatest admirals locked themselves in their war rooms, only to find that they no longer controlled anything. Their fleets had been hacked, their AI subroutines rewritten, their infrastructure turned into a weapon against its own creators. And then the true horror began. From the ruins of their own civilization, the Zeltari saw something descend. Not drop ships, not mechs, but shadows. Humanity had evolved beyond war. Now, we became the war. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. And when it was over, the Zeltari Council ceased to exist. Word of the massacre spread faster than light. The Ralshan Dominion and the Vornex Unity, the last two remaining galactic powers, met in secret. Their leaders, once bitter rivals, now spoke as brothers united by fear. If we do nothing, we will be next. They marshaled their forces, gathering every remaining fleet, every superweapon, every secret technology once considered too dangerous to use. They poured every last resource into a single desperate gambit. A war to end humanity once and for all. It was an act of madness. It was also the only option left. The combined Galactic Armada, the largest fleet ever assembled, prepared for war. Billions of warships, trillions of soldiers. Every empire, every species, every remaining power in the galaxy standing together in a single final stand. And then, as if summoned by their defiance, the sky split open, and humanity arrived. No one knows exactly what they saw when the human armada appeared. The first to lay eyes on it went insane. The second group suffered total neural failure. By the time the fleet fully emerged, sensors stopped functioning altogether. It was too massive to measure, too impossible to comprehend. The ships did not move through space. They bended. Their weapons did not fire. They deleted. Every known law of physics was broken. Every rule of war rewritten. Every battle ever fought in the history of the galaxy suddenly seemed like child's play compared to what humanity had become. The Galactic Armada fired first. It did not matter. Nothing mattered anymore. Humanity had transcended. And as the stars themselves began to die, the last survivors of the Dominion and Unity realized the terrible truth. Humanity had been waiting, not hiding, not retreating, preparing. And now, the war was over before it even began. At the edge of a collapsing galaxy, one final message was transmitted. It was not a warning. It was not a threat. It was a command. You had your chance. And then, one by one, the stars began to go out. Humanity had won. Not just this war, not just this galaxy, but everything. The darkness belonged to us now. The Dominion and the Unity were gone. Not defeated, not conquered, simply erased. Entire species wiped from existence as if they had never been. Planets once filled with life, now nothing more than cold, empty husks. Not even ruins remained, just silence. And in the wake of humanity's return, the galaxy itself began to break. The stars flickered, their once eternal flames dimming, as if the void itself had begun to consume them. Some whispered that humanity had found a way to kill suns, that our war had advanced beyond planets, beyond civilizations, beyond matter itself. Others spoke of something worse, that humanity had become something else, no longer bound by flesh and blood, no longer constrained by time or space, no longer human. And if that was true, then the galaxy had only one fate left: extinction. The few species that still remained hid in the outermost reaches of space, in systems so distant that even light took millennia to reach them. They did not send transmissions. They did not build great cities. They did not even dare to speak. To exist was to risk notice, and to be noticed was to die. Some believed that humanity had moved on, that we had abandoned the Milky Way, leaving it as a graveyard of our own making. That perhaps the nightmare had passed. And then the monoliths appeared. No one knew where they had come from. One day, they were simply there. Massive obsidian structures, standing silent over the ruined worlds of those who had dared to defy us. They stretched from the surface of planets into the void itself, their surfaces carved with impossible symbols, their presence an eternal reminder. Each monolith bore a single message, written in every language ever spoken. Remember, nothing more. And yet, the message was clear. Humanity had not left. Humanity was watching. And if the galaxy ever dared to rise again, if it ever even thought of opposing us, we would return, and there would be nothing left to remember. Eons passed. Galaxies beyond the Milky Way expanded. New empires rose and fell, their wars insignificant, their struggles meaningless. They had never heard of Earth, never spoken the name of humanity. But the darkness between galaxies told a different story. Something moved in the void. Something waited. Something watched. And then, one day, across the universe, across all of existence itself, a new message appeared. Not from a fleet, not from a world, not from people, but from the abyss itself. We are still here, and the stars trembled. The universe moved on. New civilizations emerged across distant galaxies, species born and raised in the wake of forgotten wars. To them, humanity was nothing more than a myth, a whispered legend passed down by the oldest and most broken of exiles. They built their empires. They waged their wars. They dreamed of power. But in the cold depths of intergalactic space, beyond the reach of light, something watched. For even in their arrogance, in their ignorance, these young empires felt it, a silent dread lurking in the void. The ancient, primal terror that all creatures feel when staring into the abyss too long. The fear of what lies beyond. And then, without warning, the first colony disappeared. It was not an invasion. There were no fleets, no battles. One moment, the colony of Joria 7 was alive, its millions of inhabitants working, thriving, building. The next, it was gone. Not destroyed, not burned, simply erased. The planet remained. Its city still stood, untouched by fire or war. Ships still sat in docking bays. Tools lay where their owners had dropped them. But the people were missing. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. It was as if they had never existed at all. And across the cosmos, the terror began to spread. The newly rising empires searched for answers. Fleets were dispatched. Armies mobilized. Science teams scoured the abandoned world for any clue, any trace of what had happened. Then, one by one, the researchers began to vanish, until only one transmission remained. A voice, broken by static, whispering a name not spoken in millennia. They have returned. Then silence. At first, the universe did not believe. Humanity was gone, they claimed. The stories of the silent lords of soul were myths, nothing more than old war propaganda meant to frighten primitive species. But when the second colony vanished, then the third, then entire star systems, belief became fear. It wasn't war. It wasn't conquest. It was judgment, a tribunal held by the unseen. And every species that dared to raise itself too high, that reached too far into the void, received a verdict. Guilty. And the sentence? Oblivion. The universe had no choice. It united in a way it never had before, forging alliances that should have been impossible. Enemies became allies. Old hatreds were cast aside. The greatest minds of every species worked together, building weapons beyond imagination, defenses layered upon defenses. The Grand Armada was formed, the might of every species, every empire, every last civilization that refused to vanish into the dark. They called themselves the Last Stand. And at the edge of the void, where the abandoned galaxies met the darkness of the unknown, they made their stand. They pointed their weapons into the abyss, watching, waiting, praying that their unity, their defiance, would mean something. And then the void answered. The darkness moved. A shape emerged, a vessel that was not a vessel, a presence that was not bound by metal or matter. A titan of obsidian and fire, a shadow stretching across the cosmos, eclipsing entire star clusters in its wake. It was not a fleet. It was not a ship. It was soul itself, the heart of humanity, the blackened sun of a race that had become more than flesh, more than machine, more than gods. And from its depths came a single voice, ancient and absolute, echoing through the very fabric of reality. Your time is over. The last stand opened fire, and the universe burned.